I would like really to introduce to you the boss of the day. So Peter Becker, please come on stage. He's the president of World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So a hard welcome to Peter.
It's a complete misunderstanding that I'm the boss, by the way. Good morning. How are you? Can I have my slides on the screen, please, Tom? 1 minute? Okay, well, I want to thank the Brazilian Voice. It was amazing. It's amazing for us all to be in Rio, because I know it puts a lot of stress on the city, but it's one of the best places in the world to be because it's a vibrant economy. I've been in the rainforest myself a few days ago, and if you see that with your own eyes, you know, it's a crime for illegal deforestation, so we should talk about these things. And by now I would like to have a few slides so that I can actually tell you the story that I was planning to tell you. Is that at all possible, you think, Tom? There's no slides. Okay, well, good, here we go. I can, of course, put them on the iPad, and then I will actually show them to you. I know how to work this machine, so don't worry. Here we go. So the whole point of this day is scale up. Can you see this? If the camera zooms in and puts it on the screen, then... Okay, well, here we go. There is a misunderstanding in this. Hey, here we go. Cool. Thanks, Tom. There's a bit of a misunderstanding. This is not the WBCSD day, and therefore I am not the boss of this proceeding. This is the BASD day, which is important because in total 14 business coalitions came together to organize this day. So WBCSD is part of it, if I could get it. But there is the ICC, there's the UN Global Compact, and there's all these other associations. So we're basically running this show with a whole bunch of people. We've been in Rio 20 years ago, and it was said before that there's lots of progress made. Today, they're negotiating the future we want, but, and that is my big but, if you go, there's still poverty out there. I don't know if any of you will have the time or have found the time, but I would advise you to go to Fort de Copacabana, because there's an amazing exhibition, which if you see it, you'll really know in what state the world is. Every 6 seconds, a child dies from hunger. If we look at the next slide, maybe. Where do I aim this? I aim it there. The environmental damage is amazing in the world. What is even more amazing is the emissions are raising up beyond belief. The IEA published a book recently in which it said that in 2017 the world will be locked in a 5-degree warming scenario. We're negotiating 1.5, 2 degrees, but we're moving 5 degrees fast. So it's true, we're making progress, but the growth of population is washing all that progress away, and that is going to be a big challenge. We, of course, all know that drastic change is required. Can I have the next one? And you know, we've all written books, there are some of these in the room, on what the change should look like. This is Vision 2050. And business is really going to have to be the force for change. If we want to save the world, it's business who's going to have to do it. It's us, it's leaders like yourself. And business has been doing all kinds of things. We've developed CSR. 10 years ago, social responsibility was the new thing. Today, all companies here in the room are integrating sustainability into their strategies. The next step, and that's the topic of today, is how the hell do we scale this up? Because I've been honest in the newspaper yesterday, if all of our commitments, all of our CSR programs are being added up, we still are not close enough to solving the problems. So we need scale and we need speed. So we've put scale up on every wall that you can find in this building. And that's where we're going to have to talk about. So how do we scale up? There's going to be sector sessions this morning on all kinds of sectors. And the question there is, how do we turn best practice into standards? We're going to have cross-sector debates and talking about how do we solve cities? How do we solve water? How do we solve mobility? We're having sessions about the government. How do we get the policies that will allow business to accelerate the solutions that we need? And the best way to scale up is how do we get more people, more businesses in rooms like this to join the fight? And that's going to be done through the accounting system. So the natural capital accounting declaration that was made this week is going to be important. The integrated reporting initiative that is out there is going to really fundamentally scale up everything. And that's on the agenda today. So please, do not give me stories of how great the things are that you're already doing. I love you for it. I do. I admire everything you do. But we need more, we need it fast, and you need to help us find it. So lastly, there have been 3 days already in this same room, and Georg Kell has been running them. Amazing man, UN Global Compact, Corporate Sustainability Forum, and Georg, just before he runs out, will tell us in 2 minutes what happened there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. It's wonderful to be here and wonderful to support WBCSD, ICC, and all the other partners in scaling up. It's not only very topical and urgent, but I believe also full of opportunities, which many of you already have started to explore. But by diving deeper into the issues, I'm sure you will discover much more. Just briefly, for the last 3 days here in the same premise, about 3,000 participants met on 6 topics, very much what we will scale up today even further, to prepare the ground for what you're doing today on water, on finance, on gender empowerment, on how to deal better with governments. I think we all heard your call, Peter, that we have to learn how to scale up, and one step forward is to collaborate much more effectively. And that's why I'm really so happy and pleased to be here. I want to say one more very important message also for our dear colleagues from the International Chamber of Commerce and all those who have known from history how important it is to build a multilateral framework that supports business growth and that helps to diffuse the innovations and solutions so badly needed. I think most of you here in the room share the sense that the world may be heading in the wrong direction, and Peter outlined some of what's wrong. But there's also a political volatility out there I think we haven't seen in decades. And that has to do with big changes that are happening around the world, and that has to do with, unfortunately, the fact that more and more nation states, governments are turning a little bit more inward and becoming a little bit more selfish. And I think for business leaders, it is essential also to go back to the spirit of the ICC of 1919 to recognize that one of the biggest experiments we're all involved here is building a global marketplace that is inclusive and sustainable. And that's where sustainability and the solutions will feed into and help to bring opportunities all over the world. The UN Global Compact is proud to support WBCSD and work with the WBCSD and with the International Chamber of Commerce. And I believe by working together, we actually stand a chance to make a big difference. One way is now we are in this bottom-up phase where we mobilize CSR, corporate sustainability, to bring it to scale. We need to find the leverage points to really scale up fast, as Peter said, and we fully subscribe to that agenda. And I'm confident by working together, we can make a big, big difference. All the best wishes for a successful day. All the best for the future for all of us. Thank you.
So I promise you, we're not going to make you sit through a whole day of plenaries. We're going to do one panel now, and then we're going to ask you and invite you all to go out to breakout rooms and bring us solutions, ideas, and scale. But the panel we're actually wanted to start today with is amazing. Somebody told me, how did you pull this off to get so many leading CEOs of Brazil in one room? But it worked. So can I invite the panel on stage? Mr. Carlos Fadigas, CEO of Braskem. Is he here? Somehow, somewhere, hopefully. Oh, there he is. Good morning. Can I have Mr. Penido from Fibria on the stage? Good morning. How are you? Mr. Marshall Angel Portela. Hey, good morning. From Santander in Brazil. Mr. Murilo Ferreira. Thank you. From Vale. Should be here. And I think it's Marcus Besido, chairman of the Sabats, and also the boss of Philips here in Brazil. Please come on stage. Good morning.
So I'll be trying to moderate your session, but before I do anything, I would just like to ask each of you, why don't you spend 3 or 4 minutes to tell the people what you're doing, but like I said, not only the good things you're doing, but also what within your sector you can see as opportunities to scale up, and what proposals you're going to bring to the meeting today. So who wants to go first? All the way to the back? Good. Carlos, there you go.
So, first of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here. The part of BASD that I like the most is the one about action, the A on BASD. And I'm here to represent in the chemical industry, the ICCA, the International Council for Chemical Associations, and Braskem as well. I'm glad to say that the chemical industry is part of the solution, as we all have been discussing here, and it has to be, simply because chemicals are used in 95% of the manufactured products. So everything you see around you has chemicals, has chemistry that is improving the performance of the products and so on. The industry is a very large one. It has had a gross turnover of $3.8 trillion last year. Just to put that in perspective, that is actually more than the GDP of Germany, and I think we all can agree at this point that Germany is a fairly important country. So just to put things in perspective, it's a very big economy as well. It's a very big piece of the economy as well. It employs more than 20 million people. The chemical industry has enabled the dramatic reductions of emissions. We have published a study 2 years ago that shows that the use of chemicals have reduced the emission of CO2. There is actually more than the double of the emissions of the industry itself during the manufacturing process. And if you just intuitively think about the use of chemicals in sanitation, how many lives it has saved, the use of chlorine to treat water, the use of fertilizers to produce food and reduce hunger, and the use of plastics as well to reduce the weight of cars, reduce the weight of packaging, and reduce food spoilage by packaging food in plastic. So it's a very big contribution we have made so far. The industry has 2 very important initiatives I'd like to mention briefly here. One is called Global Product Strategy. It's a partnership with United Nations Environmental Program to address the goals of the United Nations Environmental Program on the safe management of chemicals. Another very important initiative is called Responsible Care. It was launched actually 20 years ago. It was initially focused on the performance of health, safety. Right now is the platform for the industry to advance also the contributions of the chemical industry to the environment as well. So just to finalize my comments here, I think innovation will come and help us solve most of the problems we face right now. It's most likely going to be relying on chemicals as well as we move forward. All the new technologies rely on chemicals. And I'll mention a brief one from Braskem. It's plastic made out of sugarcane ethanol. We have a table at the back of the room where we're distributing green plastic. It's made out of, at the end of the day, out of CO2 captured during the growth of the sugarcane. So innovation will come, and chemical industry is positioned to support the innovation. So I'd like to invite you all to join us at the breakout, during the breakout, to join us the discussion on the chemical industry.
Thank you, Carlos. Mr. Pinedo?
Thank you very much for the invitation to be here in this panel. The forest-based industry is today the largest cluster of business in WBCSD with about 30 companies. That means 15% of the total number of members. And we are living a very special moment because seeing the history from the papyrus to Gutenberg, from Gutenberg to wood pulp mills, now the pulp mills are very close to be transformed into biorefineries. So the raw materials, wood, is a biomass, recyclable, renewable, sequestrates carbon. So it generates a lot of positive points, much better than alternative materials. This is why we see that through innovation, our industry will reshape its contribution to society through a very large number of new high-tech applications, like bioplastics that Braskem is developing here in Brazil, and biochemicals, another series of biofuels, bioproducts, carbon fiber. So this is creating a huge number of new business opportunities, making our industry much closer to other new partners, like automobile industry, like pharmaceutical, like the chemical industry. So it's a very important transition time for our industry, and we see that this will contribute a lot to green the economy in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation to participate in this opening session of the Business Action Day. We, as a bank, we are convinced that the business community, together with other constituencies, scholars, civil society, and government, we have a fundamental role to find the best solutions for the main issues of sustainable development. Social and environmental issues are no longer an external discussion for businesses, but rather they have become a central component of our strategy. And the financial sector, as we play a key role towards integrating sustainability within the strategy of many entities, given the intermediation role that we play, and establishing ever-growing standards to be met by ourselves, by our clients, and by our suppliers. For us, Banco Santander, sustainable development is structured in three main lines of actions. The first one is the financial and social inclusion. I'm not going to refer to the thousands, millions of new middle classes that have been bankerized, as we say, that have opened a new account in a bank for the first time in their lives in the last 10 years in this country. It's something like 30, 40 million people. So we believe this is a real contribution of the sector to the social inclusion. But I could also refer to microcredit, for instance. We encourage productive activities and social relations among the less privileged, creating professions, jobs, and income. Santander is the main player among the private banks in Brazil. We have already disbursed over 1 billion reais for more than 230,000 entrepreneurs in more than 600 cities in Brazil. The second line of action is education. Santander's main contribution is called Santander Universidades, geared towards higher education. Besides financing students, professors, and institutions, we have granted over 45,000 scholarships in Brazil and about 100,000 in the world in the last years. The third area is environmentally responsible business management. The financial sector is increasingly including sustainability-related criteria for doing business. For example, in the risk assessment process, Banco Santander Brazil was the pioneer, including these criteria. we have helped to increase the standards for us and for our clients. The application of those criteria lead us to refuse financial operations with the conviction that the refusal will have better results for all involved. In 2011, we disbursed a total of 1.2 billion reais. Regarding our own processes, we have a strict management of our ecological footprint as well. We are proud of what we have accomplished so far. However, we are committed to do much more. For doing so, we have to address two main issues. The first is to increase the scale of our operations to the point that they become the normal way of doing business. The second is to keep innovating, searching for new business models. Our plans are to expand our business in Brazil, always keeping sustainability as an integral part of our strategy, working towards achieving more financial and social inclusion, better education, more environmentally responsible business management. We are committed to scale our operations in all three fronts. The effort is big. The payout will be even bigger. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Ferreira, the perspective from Vale.
Good morning. Thank you for our invitation. In fact, we don't have mining in New York, London, or Paris. Then talking about mining, we must talk about poverty. And poverty is a human right violation. We know that at least 1.3 billion people living in different parts of the world, they are having income below $1.25. And we must address this issue. We must know precisely what's the future of the mining industry in this context. We must pursue a new and to do differently as used to do in the past. In this contest, we have an opportunity to offer jobs, an opportunity to do in such a way that we could call responsible way. And I think that we needed to reduce the disparity in this region. Rethinking of conception of the development, it's very important. I think that mining industry has a crucial role in this regard. It's very important role. And I think that the competitiveness of the mining industry in the coming decades will be well defined in this contest. I think the responsibility challenges for mining are enormous, so big. And we must continue to create value for our shareholders for sure. But we must bring in a different scenario, reducing the disparity. And I think that we needed to include the preservation of the water, the preservation of the forest, and working in a very responsible way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marcus.
Peter, thank you. Well, I'll talk about energy, but not energy sources of energy generation. I would like to talk about the efficient use of electricity, of energy, and through lighting. Lighting represents 20% of total electricity consumption in the globe. And the Pareto of that consumption is basically street lighting and also commercial buildings like hotels like this. You can see this is not very efficient. So I want to talk the LED, the lighting story, that can provide up to 85% energy saving. On average 40, but all the way up to 85%. So I'll give you some impressive numbers. If we could change commercial buildings and street lighting into LED globally, we would save 128 billion euros on electricity cost. So for instance, on cities, street lighting represents 50% of the electricity bill. So all the cities will need smarter cities. All the cities are really pressured from a budget perspective. As a matter of fact, in Brazil, for instance, the responsibility for street lighting is turning into the mayors, as of 2013. So it's a wonderful opportunity to not only save, but also to improve people's lives. Changing to LED, we changed here in Brazil, for instance, in the Ibirapuera Park, and the frequency of the park in the evenings grew 35%. We did pre and post survey, and we can see that how lighting can really improve the mood, and the quality of life of people. So I think, the lighting story is a low-hanging fruit in the energy arena, and also much lower capex when you compare, to sources of energy. So this is the lighting story. I think when you go back, just look up in your office, see the lighting you have that you're working at, and you may consider to change to LED. It will be very cost efficient, will reduce your bill. It's less than 3-year ROI, so it's quite a good investment, and will help to save our planet. So this is the lighting story. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. When I started, I said, if we want to scale up, we can do that within sectors, we can do it across sectors, we can do it by talking to governments, and we can do it by changing the accounting systems. I want to run some of these ideas by you. And Carlos, I've been in discussions here where people said, of course, we can work together in sectors, and we do what is called pre-competitive collaboration. Other people say, no, that's not possible at all. We just should compete who's the most sustainable company in each sector. How do you look at that from the chemical sector perspective?
I think the chemical sector is kind of different in a way that all the companies compete among themselves, but they also cooperate. The product chains goes through several chemical companies most of the time. So it's different from the automotive industry, for example, where people just sell to the end consumers. So we have a lot of connections between the companies. So in that regard, we have been partnering with some of the companies. Actually, Braskem has a partnership with Novozymes that is here as well. And we are working together to develop green chemicals. So I think that I would say in the end of the day, depend on the industry, but in most of the cases, I believe that cooperation would probably be the best way to address the solution. No single company would have all the answers, or if they have some of the answers, they wouldn't have everything that is needed throughout the value chain. So cooperation would, at the end of the day, be much more powerful as we combine knowledge, products, industrial facilities as well. And it doesn't have to be among companies in the same sector. Naturally, there are cross-sector cooperations as well.
Okay. Mr. Ferreira, for the mining, is it possible to work within this sector to all together become more sustainable and scale up?
For sure. I think that it's mandatory. We must work in different places. We know that the increase of population in these countries will be an event that we cannot avoid. Today we have 7 billion people in the world. 2050 will be 9 billion people in the world. Most of these people come from the same place, emerging countries, and we will be there. Mining industry will be mainly in these countries. And then we must work together in order to contribute with education, with health, trying to reduce the disparity, which is in fact the big problem that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pinedo, I think in the forest industry and in the broader pulp and paper industry, there's been a lot of cross-sector and value chain collaboration. Could you give some examples of that and inspire people?
Yes, Peter. As I mentioned on my first speech, I said that my industry is undergoing a very dramatic transformation. So the group of companies that we called ourselves Forest Solutions Group, we are integrating all companies since those on the very upstream, on the close to the forest, sustainable management, plantations, all the way through the very high end of the consumer's decision. Let's say companies like Unilever and others that are selling a lot of products, billion of products a day, but wrapped or with a label of a paper product. So we see that it's absolutely important to develop innovation, to integrate the research centers of the forest companies, of those companies developing industrial process, trying to reach more efficient energy applications, and shaping the future, let's say, the new products for the future. And in these aspects, I would say that we should be very open to applicate, let's say, to apply new technologies, new biotechnologies, including biotech trees that society has some kind of concerns about that, but we should be able to, with full transparency, to ensure to the society that the benefits of these new technologies by far overweight the risks independently assessed by universities and by science. So I see a huge opportunity for cooperations within the sector and with the new partners.
Thank you. Marcus, now not talking to you in your role as the head of Philips here, but as your role as chairman of SEBATS, what can the SEBATS members do to get a constructive dialogue going with the Brazilian government on the policies that business needs to accelerate sustainability? How do you see that?
Well, I think, Peter, first and foremost, I always talk with Marina. Marina is there. Can you raise your hand? She's the president of SEBATS. We have to be more proactive. We really need to engage people in this journey. It's a journey. And we have some specific projects. We're trying to experiment. So we have the Rio Cidade Sustentável. I'm not sure if all of you know about it, but we apply the technology of a lot of our companies here to sustainable technology to help people and improve people's lives. So I think our raw material, as a matter of fact, as SEBATS, is people. So my plea to the CEOs, and I was yesterday talking to Carlos, saying, Carlos, we need your assets, your people, to help SEBATS, because we have to have people thinking together with us. And I think that's what we need. So my plea to all the companies here, can we join forces? Because SEBATS and the World Business Council is a great platform for us to think, to brainstorm, and also to engage government under the SEBATS platform, not under Philips or GE. I saw Adriana here, also, or Siemens, not talking about our own interests or our own agenda, but to talk about sector and really making the difference in sustainable development. So we got to do more. We have to participate more. We have to engage more companies. We have to have more people working with us. We have the Câmaras Técnicas, the technical chambers. She wants to help me here. Can you say a little louder? Huh? Oh, yes, yeah, of course. Thank you very much. The forum of leaders that we just put together to help the government, we had many CEOs helping Isabela Teixeira, our Ministry of Environment, to really brainstorm and to articulate with the local government. We had up to 19 CEOs, I believe, in the last meeting. So we're creating that agenda, the leaders of sustainability. And we encourage all of you CEOs that are here are present and you want to participate, because it's up, the whole thing starts individually. We have to be citizens, and we have to spend time. And time is money. We're so busy with many things and thinking short term. about our quarterly results. And we need to shape up our, our future together. So I would say the leaders is definitely a great forum. We're getting very close to the government. The sustainability agenda is transversal to a lot of ministries, so it's not only an environmental challenge, it's also economic challenge, a social challenge. So we really need to get closer, to the government. The government's starting to get more collaborative and open about it. So I think that's what we're doing, precisely. We're also presenting to the government the Brazilian version of the Vision 2050 that we prepared together with the help with several of our associates. So we're doing lots of things, experiments, as I mentioned, the Rio Cidade Sustentável. So we just need to get to action, to be more, to create a positive agenda, to propose more things, produce less papers and do more things. That's what we need to do.
Okay, Mr. Portello Alvarez. Now I hope I pronounced it right? Anyway, we're always talking about the government should do more and they should listen and we should go into dialogue, but I would argue the same applies to capital markets. Because there's many business leaders here who have sustainability plans and strategies, and with all the great ideas we'll be collecting today, they'll have even more, but none of that is rewarded in capital markets. And if I look in the WBCSD or in other formats like that, the banking and the finance sector is really missing there as a voice. So besides all the great sustainability work that you're doing in Santander, what can we do to get the capital markets interested and truly involved in these debates? Because otherwise, Marcus will continue to be worried about his quarterly results and his job if these are not what the market expects. But we should really get the market focused on long term as well. What do you see needs to happen to get the banking sector there?
Well, I think talking as a sector, the main issue would be to find new business models, and specifically in banking, and related also to capital markets. We should try to find new risk models. Banks in general, we still work with paradigms, with models that come from the past and don't incorporate well what society is already dealing with. And so models that can incorporate, for instance, externalities to the prices, and that can deal with a different business model so that sustainability is not the final part of a process, but something that it's just inside the core business of the sectors and of the companies. This would represent a fundamental change, I think. So there is part, I would say, that it's homework that we have to do. And very often you do your homework when you have an external pressure. So I think banks that try to be often more traditional institutions, a bit bureaucratic institutions, we need some pressure, some more pressure from society and from different constituencies. And certainly we are going to change when having pressure. This is the first. And I would add, even if it is not always the most expected thing to talk about, that we also need regulation. There are some things that can only be changed by moving the regulation ahead. I think from this point of view, I think it's very positive the fact that the Central Bank of Brazil is going to establish some principles to orientate the activities of the sector in terms of sustainability. So I'm positive about the future. To speed up the changes, I think we need some more pressure. Thank you.
Thank you.
You are all CEOs, right? Your job is to inspire your people and give direction and strategy. So that's what you're going to have to do now. Just imagine that all these people are your employees for a second. Just play the game along, boys and girls. This is, we're going to ask all of them to go to breakout rooms to talk about how do we scale up in our sector. So all of you got 1 minute to inspire the room with your big idea. What do you want these people to focus on? And what is the outcome you would like to see? So what is your big idea that you're going to present to them? Could I start with you, Carlos?
Okay, so we can also think that we have the shareholders here as well, so it could be even more motivating depending on how you see it. So my comment to you would be that we need to scale up, we need to increase the pace. We have the chemical industry participation in virtually everything that is manufactured in the world. We've been making very important progress. We're going to have representatives from most relevant chemical companies at the panel, and we're looking forward to have contributions from the employees and a very fruitful discussion on things that we should be doing, we are not doing right now, and things we are doing and we should increase the scale, and so on. I think that the dialogue between society, companies, government, like we've said here, is very critical and very important. So I think we have the right people to discuss the right topics, and it's the very appropriate moment to do so, and looking forward to have your contribution on this discussion so we can scale up, move faster.
Thank you. Mr. Pineda, your big idea, please.
As coming from a sector that operates with the land, I would say that forestry and agriculture are the best option to generate a transformational impact for inclusion and for poverty eradication, because this is an area where our contribution impacts directly those 1.5 billion people still living in substandard conditions of life. So I would say that we have a chance to speed up transformation, integrating, making the right information for those people, those 80% people living in urban areas, to recognize the importance of the farmers, of the rural people, for the quality of life people enjoy in cities. And to finalize, I would say that forestry is absolutely central to manage the climate change concern. Let's say the forests cover 30% of the total global area and has a stock of the same size, the same amount of carbon in the whole atmosphere, if you include the biomass above the land and underground. So I would say that any strategy to fight climate change has to deeply consider forests as a central strategy. We can do a lot.
Portillo Alvarez.
Yeah, if you were part of the Santander group and you would have now some hours to think over it, I would say, please think different. Even destroy the glory of the past. Think something completely different. It's a very good opportunity. It's plenty of opportunities to make new businesses with different models and with different business models that will be very attractive for society and will be very interesting also for you. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Ferreira.
Just two key words. Social inclusion. We must talk about social inclusion. And in this regard, I think that the green economy can contribute strongly in order to have this inclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah, for me, very briefly, I think we need to keep the human element in the center of our efforts. We really need to aim to make the difference on people's lives and improve the quality of life of people. So that's my plea. And also, of course, let's think long term.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that's the end of this panel. Would you please give him a warm hand of applause because it's amazing.